Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. I want to thank everybody for making the time in the middle of a very rich agenda for today's conversation. I'm from the English channel of CCTV, Tian. It's such a pleasure for me, an honor for me to meet with all of you, and also more privileged I feel that I am having this conversation with Mr. Wang Chuanfu. Well, very briefly, introduction. Now, everybody's talking about Britain now. Now, Shakespeare said that the future should be held in our own hands. Now, for this forum, we've been talking about the future, what the future holds, especially today, we're talking about the future of energy for this session specifically. So we're going to talk with Mr. Wang Chuanfu about the future of energy. Now, Mr. Wang Chuanfu is the chairman of BYD Company. Now, in 1995, when he first started his business, his company only had 20 people, and now 220 people, employees. Now, the size of the headcounts is actually not the key point. It's more about what the company can do for all of us. Now, once again, welcome, Mr. Wang. Now, Chinese are all about politeness and exchange of pleasantries. Now, I've done enough of that. Get down to chase. Now, a lot of people, Mr. Wang, compare BYD with Tesla in recent years. Now, in the past few years, BYD has been remain in the low key, whereas Tesla has been the focus of the media with many trends, new trends and directions for the further growth. So what's happening there? Why low key for BYD? Now, BYD is indeed low key. However, we have been very active in our action, especially in the deployment of new energy, for example, the core technologies, the batteries and the engines and controls, all these core-based technologies for us. Now, 10 years ago, when nobody was actually bullish about electric cars, we already started to have confidence in the future of electric cars. Now, Tesla is a very innovative company, and a lot of places we need to learn from them. However, we're positioned differently. Tesla is aiming for the luxury end, high-end, pricey end, whereas for BYD, we're more about acquiring the new technologies more accessible to the general public. Now, if you look at the data and statistics in the past years, BYD has been most accessible for the general public. 220,000 HEV cars were sold, and accounting for 11% of the market share. And the annual growth rate has been 113% end of last year. And this year, we expected to double that to 120,000 HEVs. Now, for the electrification of the public transit, in Shenzhen, we've been doing a pilot program, and Shenzhen actually has an ambitious goal of entire electrification of cars. Now, from the conversation so far, I feel that Mr. Wang has an engineering or science background. But this conversation, we actually want to learn more about the higher level vision. Is there any new thinking behind BYD's development and growth strategy? Now, we want to use technology to transform our life and the whole world, if you will. Now, China's reliance on oil right now accounts for 60% shipped from South China Sea, which is actually a flashpoint. And then there is the air quality issues. And for all these issues, BYD actually has these in mind. Now, the battery technologies are kind of the bottleneck for technologies for HEVs. Now, if we can resolve all these issues, and we can help resolve China's reliance on exported oil. Now, you were talking about that we are all about the technologies, and we've been doing a lot of things in a low-key manner. But if all these actions or behaviors are good for the rest of for our generations, then why not? Do we do any outer space stuff or the offshore deep sea? Well, we've had a wealth of accumulated technologies. It's sort of like a pool of different fish. Now, when there is a need, and we can get something from them, from the pool, and we have this Airbus program. Now, Airbus sounds new. What is it? Now, because of the urbanization in China, urbanization is about efficiency, actually. For example, cultural industry. Cultural industry actually needs people. Now, if you do not have at least 10 million people, and then you cannot afford to urbanize the city. But everybody is living in the city. Inevitably, there is congestion. And on the ground, so many cars jamming the streets. So we can do underground. Now, underground pipes, of course, more expensive. However, the traffic congestion can be resolved. Now, what do you mean by Airbus? In the air? Well, we can actually do a transportation network 5 to 10 minutes elevated above the ground, and all the vehicles are electrical. Well, that sounds a brand new concept. However, it does need a lot of coordination relating to the civil administration and infrastructure. Now, in mapping this program out, do you think there's a lot of potential or prospect for your program named Airbus? Yes. We have 3 plants of 2.8 square kilometers and trying to resolve the transportation needs of my employees of 50,000 there. Now, vision aside, let's talk about the immediate issues. Now, what is the prospect for the HEV cars? We like HEVs because they are environmentally friendly. And secondly, because of the oil prices rocketing, and now it's moving to another direction. Now, possibly because of the geopolitical issues, oil prices might not rebound to the historic high. So for HEVs, are they facing new challenges in that context? Now, there's a number. The engine, 1 liter of oil, lowest still would be 5 renminbi. And then for electricity, 1.8 RMB, between 1.8 and 6 RMB. That is the average cost. So electric cars can improve the environment, also reduces the cost significantly. When the oil price dropped to gas prices dropped to 1.3 RMB, it cannot reduce to 1.8 RMB per liter. Now, if I may remind you, electricity, there is a price protection. If it's completely market-based, it would be different. Now, if you look at the past 10 years, the electricity prices has been changed under 1% year on year. In China, a car can cost 2 tons of fuel. You probably might not think where that gas is from, but the leadership actually is thinking a lot about this. 60% of growth rate of export oil year on year in China now.
And probably that is going to rise to 70%. Oil security is a big problem for China. So EV, first of all, in China, helped address oil security, and then it protects the environment and eventually ecological preservation. It is more urgent for China than Europe and the United States. Talking about environmental protection, we know that electricity is mainly generated by coal-fired plants. There are big plants which are greener nowadays, but they're still smaller and heavily polluting plants. So coal electricity is powering your EVs, so we have a so-called clean environment. However, the trace of this value chain, the electricity is still not clean. So is it a real new energy that can help our environment? Are we treating smog and pollution? Are we creating a problem? There are several ways of generating electricity: PV, wind power, hydro. These are carbon-free. We can also charge in our batteries. Cars with new energy electricity. Of course, coal electricity is a problem. However, it represents more a centralized way of generation, and we're seeing new technologies and cleaner technologies. The emissions are being reduced. Even for oil-fired plants and coal-fired plants, the efficiency is still higher than fuel-powered AVs. Our audience probably will have their own perspectives about your explanations and your observations. How to charge the batteries? This is a big challenge. We don't have a lot of charging poles. And how long can the batteries last? These are the bottlenecks. As a champion, a national champion for EV, how are you going to address those obstacles? This is a very good question. It is indeed one of the key obstacles. The longevity of the batteries infrastructure, charging infrastructure, these are the hurdles or the threshold to EV purchases. In cities, we can first develop electric public transit. We should fully electrify public transit first. And now we're developing hybrid cars. That is, in short run, you can use your battery, and for the long run, you can use fuel. For cities like Beijing and Shanghai, that is, your distance of commuting is 80 to 100 kilometers. You can still run on your battery. Then we can wait for the infrastructure to develop for 10 to 20 years when you have a lot of charging poles, as many charging poles as gas stations, which was the situation 10 years back when you drove a car out. You had to bring with you a tank of fuel because back then we didn't have that many gas stations. So you need to give the government time. So for private mobility, probably hybrid vehicles would be the primary option right now. Our hybrid cars are selling very well in Tier 1 cities, as well as Tianjin. The technology is developing very fast, and the phase out and upgrading of one technology probably would take a couple of years. So what sounds beautiful nowadays might be outdated in a few years. You're talking about taking our time, waiting for the infrastructure to develop, but can we afford to take our time? Well, actually, what you said is true. In 2015, there are 300,000 EVs, 1.3% of the total volume of fuel vehicles. Well, 3 years back, most people were very negative about EVs. So it took 10 years for the percentage to grow from 0 to 1.3%. And then from that to 10%, maybe even shorter period. And I think that 1.3% in 10 years time frame is a big confidence vote. For instance, for LCDs and flat screen, 1.3% of the traditional market is a turning point. So by 2020, probably the percentage will reach 10%, and 2025, 30%. So how high is the probability? Do you have your own calculation, or it's just a forecast? According to the 13th five-year program, by 2020, there will be 5 million EVs. That means there will be a growth of 2.5 million in 2020 alone. And according to past experiences, most of the time we exceeded the target of the five-year plan ahead of time. Talking about turning points, the EV industry is probably at a critical juncture. Not all the news is positive. As far as I know, that you sell very well on some markets and your market share is growing. Some local governments are providing their own views, have their own views about how much subsidies they should provide to EVs like BYD cars. Well, in China, at least in China, government support and government policies are very important for growth of these industries. You probably have done your own math. If government subsidies change, what does it mean to your business? I think the number one contributor to the growth of industry is the Chinese government because of the institutional support and because of the government support. A sound system, including financial system, fiscal system, and all kinds of supports. For a new product like EV, the government has done its job. The government has made it clear that by 2020, the subsidies will cease to be provided, and there will be a reduction of 20% in 2017, another 20% in 2019. Right now, the subsidy is about 30% for 2 models. I believe by 2020, our total production will be 1 million. And last year, our production was 62,000. And we're confident we're able to reduce our cost by 30%. Even if the government reduced the subsidy by 20%, we're still going to make a profit. How are we going to reduce cost? Scale of economy as well as technology improvement were highly vertically integrated. Optimization, process innovation, that's what we're best at. But we're seeing some changes in mega cities. There are already changes in the policies for the worse. You're talking about things in the future, 2017, 2019. How are you going to cope with the current situation? We're launching new products in those cities where the government subsidies are changing, and we are reducing our prices by cutting cost. We're already adjusting our prices in accordance with the government policy adjustments. How do you communicate with the government? Local governments and central government probably are foreign audience are most interested in this. I heard that you are voted as the most important a spotlight industry, a business in the government's portfolio. First of all, we are on good terms with the government. When the top government leaders come to our plants, we report to them our latest development. We communicate our problems with our local governments. Both the central government and the local governments have been very friendly to us. They address our problems, provide solutions. And secondly, clean technology is very important. We're based in Shenzhen. The Shenzhen government is very clean as well as efficient. So cleanness as well as friendship with the government are very important. And our two characteristics are our relationship with the government. The government provides support, while the business has to play a leading role. And Shenzhen is a highly developed market. So we play by the rules of the market. Over the years, a lot of entrepreneurs came to the fore in Shenzhen, proving the enabling environment of the city. We still have a few minutes left. I would like to discuss with you the vision of an entrepreneur. I know that when you started in 1995, you worked on a battery, and then you also had a big market share in chips as well as other electronic products. However, you decided to change in 2003. BYD purchased a car company, embarking on a whole new industry. As far as I know, that your stock price at the time were halved. I admire you for your confidence at the time and for your vision. And nowadays, there are a lot of discussions about new energy, about EVs. So what is coming up next, the next big idea? People are talking about Internet Plus nowadays, sharing economy, platform economy. Are there any, what is the next big idea in new energy? BYD is not only a Chinese company, you're also establishing global presence. Very important. I have sent you a lot of compliments. I hope that you can describe the future for us. I think we have an arduous task. 2015 is a turning point for EVs. I just now talked about 1.3% for EVs. And 25 million cars per year, and 10% will be 2.5 million. By 2025, the growth will be 30%. This is a trillion RMB industry, and also it has a lot of supporting industries. So we have to think about whether we have sufficient resources to grow. So in the next 5 years, we're going to solidify our leadership and our strength and grow in a sounder and more sustainable way. We have to work on our core technologies and to build a brand, and even strive to build an international brand As you mentioned, we're in a multinational company. We are listed on both Shanghai Stock Exchange and Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and receive investment from Warren Buffett. So we have such international endorsement, and electric buses are running in 200 cities in the world. We're also growing in the United States. We have an electric bus in California, Lancaster, to be specific. And actually, we provide our technologies and filling the gap in the U.S. So we're not only good at making products, we can also provide good technologies and become a respectable technology leader.
Now, for the electric buses or all the other AVs, we want to be solid in our technologies, and in 10 years or more, BYD wants to develop solutions for the congested traffic through our Airbus and other technologies or solutions, and even longer term for the solar cells plus EVs. We already started this strategy. Now, coal cannot be the solution. Solar power is the key for a solution. Solar power is sustainable and something that we can rely on for a long time. However, solar also has its disadvantages because at night you cannot rely on the solar power. But there comes the storage problem. Now, as long as we can solve these problems, we can help resolve at least the transportation. Now, one thing we want to do at BYD for our future generation, for our children, for the health of and the sustainability of our Earth, we want to play our due part, how small it might be. Now, we have 1 minute left. Now, talk with us, share with us. As entrepreneurs, we're talking about the economic structural changes and also the new normal or new context of the macroeconomy. Now, entrepreneurs actually require or need a lot of confidence and determination in making new changes and transitions. Now, what are the most important factors behind your decision-making in such important decision-making points? Because please share with us, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience as well. Now, I do not speak for other people. Now, we're in the industry, the real sector. Now, in the beginning, of course, we were talking about making money, profit-making, but entrepreneurs actually shoulder a sense of mission. But the sense of mission is more important, especially in the process of the business development and growth. Now, we need a strategy in service of the society. And our foundation is technology. Now, perseverance is really important because you might encounter a lot of obstacles in innovation. When you want to innovate, there are a lot of doubts coming from different parties, including your shareholders. That's where you should stay the course as long as you believe you're doing the right thing. Do not give up. Victory waits in the end. It sounds very philosophical. Now, I want to thank you again, Mr. Wang, Chairman of BYD. Thank you for your time and your sharing. Thanks.
Thank you.